In this third lesson on measurement, we're going to look at converting between the metric system and the U.S. customary units. As Canadians, we use mostly the metric system, but being next door to the U.S. and with many trades and different fields still using the U.S. customary units or the imperial system, it's really important that we also have the skills to convert between them, at least in our areas that we need to work in. For instance, if you're a baker, you're going to want to be able to convert between systems with volume and weight, and if you are working construction, you may need to be able to convert units of length. This table is taken from your textbook, and what's interesting about the table is that we really only need one of the two columns of measurements conversions, because really the second column is the reciprocal of the first. And on your calculator you could try that. For instance, if you did looked at the conversion between miles and kilometers, and you just on your calculator did 1 divided by 1.61, you'll end up with 0.62, the reciprocal of that. So really one column on this side is the only one that you really need, but it's convenient to have both. Notice too that one of the measurements is an exact value, and that's the inch to centimeter. The 2.54 centimeters is actually an exact value. So now let's practice doing some conversions here where we're going between the two systems. And we'll use the same method of dimensional analysis where we multiply thinking about what our units are so that we can do our conversions. So we're going to go in step A from 6.7 meters to yards. So we're starting with meters, and so we're going to multiply by yards per meter. So we'll take our 6.7 times 1.09 over 1, and we end up with 7.3 yards. Now, we could also have done this yards over meters. We could have done it differently. We could look at the other half of the chart. I'm going to just switch to green here a second. We just did this one where we did 1 meter equals 1.09 yards. If we do this one instead, you'll notice that we get the same answer. We could have gone 6.7 times, and we're thinking yards over meters, so 1 yard is 0.914 meters, and we end up with 7.3 yards again. Okay? So to 1 decimal place, at least these will be equivalent. All right, let's move on to question B. 7.3 liters to quarts. So that's from our units of volume. So we'll take our liters and we'll multiply by quarts per liter. So we'll do 7.3 times 1.06 over 1, and we end up with 7.7 quarts. Now, centimeters to feet, you'll see that there isn't a centimeters to feet conversion on the chart. So instead, we need to think of a way that we can use the items on the chart. And notice that we can go from centimeters to inches, and then we can go from inches to feet. So we'll actually take our centimeters, and I'm going to put the numbers and the units in together, which is really helpful, especially for these slightly more complex problems that we're about to do here. So if I start with 172 centimeters, I want to cancel these centimeters out and end up with inches. So I'm going to multiply by 1 inch over 2.54 centimeters using our formula, because 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. And I'm going to multiply by 1 foot per 12 inches. Okay, notice that centimeters divided by centimeters is 1 inches divided by inches is 1. So now I can do 172 times 1 times 1, which I don't actually have to enter into the calculator. I can just do 172 and divide it by 2.54 and then divide by 12, and I end up with 5.6 feet, because feet are the units that are left. We can do the same thing with rates. So 100 kilometers per hour, to compare that to miles per hour, let's do the same thing. We're going to do 110 kilometers per 1 hour. Okay, that's one way to think of it. And I'm going to just take that R off because that isn't part of the proper abbreviation. It's just an H for abbreviation. And I'm going to multiply that by 0.62 miles now per kilometer. Okay, kilometers divided by kilometers are 1. So when I multiply, I'm going to end up now with 68.2. And notice the units. I still have that hour in the denominator and miles in the numerator. So I have miles per hour. Let's take a look at this next one where we're converting the units in the numerators and in the denominators. In physics, we often talk about speeds as meters per second, so this is a useful one. We'll start with 110 kilometers per hour again, and we're going to convert that to meters per second. And that's going to take a few steps because we need to convert our numerators over, but then we also need to convert the hours to seconds. So we'll start with 110 kilometers per 1 hour, and we're going to multiply that. We want meters in our numerators, so we're going to multiply that by 1,000 meters per 1 kilometer, and I see I typed in 100 kilometers instead of 110. And now we need to get our denominator simplified. So 1 hour has 60 minutes in it, so we can multiply by 1 hour has 60 minutes. And notice that now we no longer have hours in the denominator. Okay, and these kilometers also divide out to be 1. So now we have meters. If we stopped now, we would end up with meters per minute, but we want seconds, so we're going to multiply by minutes per second to get our seconds in the denominator. So 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds. So now our minutes divide out, and our new units now will be meters in the numerator and seconds in the denominator. So we'll multiply that out, and we'll have 110 times 1,000, and we'll divide by 60 and divide by 60. Anything in the numerator we multiply, any numbers left in the denominator would divide, and we end up with approximately equal to 30.56 meters per second. Now that's driving speed in meters per second. Let's take a look at very fast airplane speed in miles per hour to meters per second. So we're going from a US customary unit, miles per hour, to a metric measurement, meters per second. Okay, I'm going to just scroll up here a little bit to give us the space that we need for that one. So miles per hour to meters per second. So to go from miles to meters, we're going to have to go through kilometers. So we're going to go from miles per hour to kilometers per mile to meters per kilometer, and then we're going to switch over our time, our denominator, so that we get seconds in the denominator like we did in the previous question. So we're going to start with 900 miles per hour, and we're going to multiply by 1.61 kilometer per mile. So now our miles have divided out, and we'll multiply by 1,000 meters per kilometer. So our kilometers have divided out. So now we have the correct numerator, units. And now we want to get seconds in the denominator. Well, 1 hour has 60 minutes in it. And 1 minute has 60 seconds in it. That does not look very nice, but that is supposed to look like seconds there. 60 seconds. So our hours have divided out, and that was a minute here. So that has divided out, and we're left with seconds now. We have meters in our numerator and seconds in our denominator, so we're on the right track. So now we multiply our numerators, 900 times 1.61 times 1,000, and we'll divide by 60 twice, and we'll end up with 402.5 meters per second. That's a lot of meters in 1 second. Our final conversion between metric and US customary is temperature, converting between Celsius degrees and Fahrenheit degrees. And there are 2 handy formulas for this. Fahrenheit degrees, this first formula gives us Fahrenheit degrees if we know the Celsius degrees, and the second one, if we know the Fahrenheit, gives us the Celsius. So let's do a couple of conversions just to get comfortable with the formulas. So a comfortable room temperature is 21 degrees Celsius. What's the equivalent Fahrenheit temperature? If you're as old as I am, you can do that conversion fairly quickly because you grew up in one, and then while you were still young, switched to another format, so then it's easy to kind of know what normal temperatures like body temperature, room temperature, boiling, freezing, etc. A lot of people my age can do those conversions fairly roughly, but can do those conversions very quickly. So we'll use our Fahrenheit formula because that's what we want. So it's going to be 1.8 times 21 plus 32, and we can use our calculators for that and get 69.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Always be sure to include the degree symbol and capital F or capital C to denote which temperature system it is. In the next question, we have a baby with a fever and a body temperature of 100 degrees Fahrenheit. What is that in degrees Celsius? So let's use our Celsius formula. C equals 5 times 104 minus 160 all over 9. And we'll get that that is 40 degrees Celsius. And one final question just to think about. A hot tub is set to 100 degrees. Is this in Celsius or Fahrenheit? And this is where it's really helpful to have some measurement ideas, some ideas of what Celsius degrees and Fahrenheit degrees are like. So if you are really comfortable with Celsius degrees, you'll remember that boiling temperature of water is at 100 degrees Celsius. So you really can't have a hot tub that's above boiling temperature because a hot tub is full of water. So this must be Fahrenheit degrees. And this is slightly warmer than body temperature, which is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's it for this lesson.